Black
You think I'm gonna
CEO
hire you with
applied
this?
for a
Get out of my
job in his
face.
own
You're a
company.
joke.
The
Leave this
outcome
restaurant
shocked
immediately.
everyone. Hello,
G
everyone.
me.
Before
Don't
we
you dare
begin
come in here
today's
again.
video,
I'll come back whenever
I
I
need
please.
your help.
You're pushing it, man. Try me.
We've noticed that the channel
told you
is
to stay
losing
away.
traction, and subscribing is
He's right.
one of the best ways
Not
you can
happening.
help us.
Whoa.
It's quick,
You're out of
free,
line,
and
guys.
I
allows
won't let
us
you
to
do this.
continue bringing
Watch your
you
tone.
great
You have no authority
content.
here.
I know
Your
everything.
support
Wait, how are you
means
supposed to be hosting that?
everything.
I've got proof.
Let's
It's
keep
over.
this channel growing collectively. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's get back to the story. I'd like to apply as a cook. The room didn't go quiet. It paused just long enough for judgment to stretch its legs. Forks hovered mid-air. A glass stopped halfway to someone's lips. The late afternoon crowd at Harvest and home kept breathing, kept chewing, but every eye slid toward the man standing beside table 12. He was black. Early 40s. Broad shoulders under a worn brown jacket. No logos. No shine. In his hands, a single sheet of paper. AR sum folded once down the middle, gripped with the kind of care reserved for things that matter. Across from him, the manager leaned back in his chair like he owned the place twice over. One ankle rested on the table's edge. A porcelain cup of coffee steamed near his knee, untouched. He didn't bother reaching for the yar sum. Instead, he laughed. Not loud. Worse. Comfortable. A cook, the manager said, eyebrows lifting as his eyes traveled slowly, deliberately over the man's clothes, his hands, his face. That's what you're going for, the man nodded once. Calm. Polite. Silent. The manager smirked, then extended a finger, pointing not at the R-sum, but past the man toward the swinging doors that led to the back of the restaurant. Dishwasher, he said. That's more your speed. You start tomorrow. A couple of servers snickered near the bar. Someone at a nearby table shifted uncomfortably. No one spoke up. The man didn't move. He stood there, some still in hand, shoulders square, expression unreadable. If the words landed like a slap, he didn't show it. He had learned a long time ago that reactions were currency, and he didn't spend them cheaply. The manager took a sip of his coffee, pleased with himself. Be grateful, he added, voice carrying just enough for the surrounding tables to hear. Not everyone gets a chance like that. The man's fingers tightened around the paper. Just slightly. He looked around the room, not searching for help, not for sympathy. Just observing. The polished wood floors. The soft jazz humming through the speakers. The way people pretended not to see what was happening right in front of them. He had seen this look before. The assumption, shin, the quiet math people did in their heads when they thought no one important was watching. Before we continue, where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. And if you believe in dignity and justice, hit like and subscribe. These stories spark change, and we're glad you're here. Now back to Marcus Reed. Marcus met the manager's eyes again. Still calm. Still silent. He didn't argue. He didn't explain. He didn't raise his voice. Because this wasn't an interview to him. It was a test. And everyone in that room, whether they knew it or not, had just started failing it. Marcus Reed didn't step back. He didn't step forward either. He remained exactly where he was standing beside table 12R, sum still in his hands, as if the room itself had been paused just for him. The manager had already turned away, satisfied, certain the moment was over. To him, Marcus was solved. Labeled, filed neatly into a box, small enough to ignore. That certainty was a mistake. Marcus wasn't dressed for authority. No tailored suit. No watch that caught the light. Just dark jeans, work boots, worn but clean, and a jacket that had seen more airports than offices. The kind of clothes you wear when you don't need them to speak for you. What no one in that room could see was the discipline behind his stillness. He had learned it young, long before titles, before boardrooms, before his name appeared on letterheads in buildings with glass walls and quiet power. He learned it the first time someone mistook calm for compliance. The first time silence was read as weakness. So he let them think that again. A server passed behind him, hesitated, then kept walking. Her eyes flicked to the sum in his hands, then to the manager's back. She swallowed whatever thought had risen and disappeared into the kitchen. Marcus watched the movement without turning his head. He took in details the way he always did when entering a space that wasn't what it pretended to be. The way the manager's chair faced the room like a throne. The way junior staff laughed a beat too late, too loud, trying to align themselves with power. The way no one asked a question, not one, before deciding who he was. The sum mattered less than the assumption. Marcus glanced down at the paper for the first time. His own name stared back at him in black ink. Education. Experience. Numbers that told a story most people only respected when they came wrapped in the right skin, the right suit, the right tone. He folded the paper once more carefully. Across the room, the manager called out orders already done with him. Plates clinked. Conversations resumed. The restaurant exhaled, relieved that the discomfort had passed. Marcus felt none of that relief. Instead, a familiar calm settled in. Not anger. Not hurt. Precision. He reached into his pocket and brushed his thumb against his phone. He didn't pull it out. Not yet. Yet. Timing mattered. Systems mattered. And this system, this restaurant, this staff, this comfortable little hierarchy was about to reveal exactly how it worked when it thought it was safe. A man at a nearby table glanced up again, brow furrowed, as if something about the scene hadn't quite sat right with him. Marcus met his eyes for a fraction of a second. No plea. No explanation. Just acknowledgement. Then Marcus looked back toward the kitchen doors. The manager thought he'd given him a job. What he'd really done was show Marcus where the rot lived. And Marcus had come here to see it up close. The manager didn't bother looking back. To him, the interaction was finished. Another small correction delivered another reminder of how the room worked. He snapped his fingers once sharp and practiced, and a busser hurried over like he'd been waiting for the signal. Show him where the sinks are, the manager said, nodding toward Marcus without turning his head. If he breaks anything, it comes out of his pay. A few chairs scraped softly against the floor as people shifted to watch, pretending they weren't. Laughter bubbled near the bar, quick, nervous, the kind that wanted to be on the winning side of power. Marcus stayed where he was. The busser hesitated, eyes flicking from the manager to Marcus. He was young. Too young to be confident in moments like this. His hands hovered at his sides, unsure whether to gesture toward the kitchen or disappear altogether. The manager noticed the pause and finally turned around. Problem? He asked, voice flat but edged. The busser shook his head immediately. No, sir. Then move, the manager said. We don't have all day. He leaned back again, crossing his arms, now surveying the room like a man certain nothing in it could surprise him. His gaze slid over Marcus one more time, dismissive, finished. Clock's in the back, he added. Assuming you can read. That earned a few more laughs. Not loud. Careful. Laughter designed to be deniable. Marcus felt it then, the shift. The moment when the disrespect stopped being casual and became intentional. The moment when power decided to perform. He looked at the busser, who still hadn't moved. It's okay, Marcus said quietly. His voice was calm, measured. Not defensive, not apologetic. The busser nodded once, relieved, and turned toward the kitchen doors. Marcus didn't follow. Instead, he took one slow step forward, just enough to re-enter the manager's line of sight. The manager frowned. I told you where to go. I heard you, Marcus replied. There was no edge in his voice. No challenge. That made it worse. The manager straightened slightly in his chair. Then what's the holdup? Marcus held his gaze. I'm just making sure I understand the role. A beat. The manager laughed again, louder this time. You wash dishes. You don't ask questions. Something tightened in the room. Not silence attention. A server froze mid-step. A couple at table 9 stopped talking altogether. The man who'd glanced at Marcus earlier leaned back in his chair, arms crossing now, watching openly. Marcus nodded once, as if considering the answer. "Good," he said. "That tells me everything I need to know." The manager's smile faltered just for a fraction of a second. Then he waved a hand dismissively. "Don't get philosophical on me. Either you want the job or you don't." Marcus didn't respond. He reached into his pocket. Not for money. Not for AR sum. For his phone. And for the first time since he'd walked in, the manager felt something he couldn't quite name, an unease he brushed off as irritation. He had no idea he'd just finished speaking his last words of authority in that room. Marcus didn't unlock his phone yet. He held it loosely at his side-screen, dark thumb resting against the edge as if feeling its weight. The manager noticed the movement and scoffed, mistaking it for hesitation. To him, phones meant excuses, delays.
Small people trying to look busy.
"Rules are simple," the manager said, already turning half away. "You follow instructions, you keep your head down, and maybe you last." Marcus looked down at the R-sum again. It was creased now from being folded and unfolded, the paper softened by time and intention. He smoothed it once with his palms slow and deliberate, like someone straightening a tie before walking into something important. They still hadn't touched it. Not a glance. Not a question. Not even the courtesy of pretending. Across the top, his name sat in clean black type. Beneath it, years compressed into bullet points. Companies built. Teams led. Revenue scaled from nothing into numbers that required commas most people never spoke out loud. None of it mattered if the hands holding the paper didn't fit the picture. The manager shifted in his chair again, annoyed now. "You deaf clocks in the back." Marcus raised his eyes. "Before I do," he said evenly, "I just want to be clear." The manager sighed loudly, a performance meant for the room. "Clear about what? That you didn't read it?" The words weren't loud. They didn't accuse. They landed anyway. A few heads turned. The manager snorted. "I don't need to read it." "Why not?" Marcus asked. That gave the manager pause. Just long enough to harden his expression. "Because I know what I'm looking at," he said. "Experience like yours doesn't walk in off the street." Marcus nodded slowly. "That's interesting," he replied. "Because everything you need to know is right there." He extended the R-sum forward, holding it out between them, not pleading, not aggressive. Offering. For a moment, the manager stared at it. Then he pushed it away with 2 fingers like it was something that might stain him. "I told you your position," he said. "Don't make this harder than it needs to be." A murmur rippled through the nearby tables. Subtle. Uneasy. The man at table 9 leaned forward now, elbows on the table, watching openly. The young server from earlier had stopped at the edge of the dining room, frozen between duty and instinct. Marcus let the R-sum fall back to his side. They judged the paper by the hands holding it, he thought. He'd seen it happen in boardrooms and bank offices too, just dressed in better language. The manager checked his watch, impatient. "You want the job or not?" Marcus met his eyes. "I already got what I came for," he said. The manager laughed sharply. "Sure you did?" Marcus slipped the R-sum into his jacket pocket and finally unlocked his phone. The screen lit his face softly, briefly illuminating something the manager hadn't seen before. Not anger. Certainty. Marcus typed one line, then another. Across the room, nothing seemed different yet. Plates still moved. Glasses still clinked. But something had shifted beneath the surface, like pressure building where no one thought to look. The R-sum hadn't been read. But the room had just been. The first sound was a chair. Not loud. Just deliberate. The man at table 9 leaned back, folding his arms across his chest, no longer pretending to be interested in his food. His fork rested untouched on the plate. His eyes stayed on Marcus, then shifted slowly to the manager. Across the room, the young server who had hesitated earlier stopped walking altogether. She stood near the service station tray, balanced against her hip, gaze fixed forward. Her jaw tightened as if she were holding something back. The restaurant hadn't gone silent. It had focused. The manager felt it before he understood it. A subtle pressure. A change in temperature that had nothing to do with the air conditioning. He straightened in his chair, irritation crawling up his spine. What he snapped, glancing around. Everyone got a problem now, no one answered. Marcus stood where he was, hands relaxed at his sides, phone already back in his pocket. He wasn't looking at the manager anymore. He was looking past him at the room, at the people, at the moment they all shared whether they wanted to or not. A couple at table 6 exchanged a look. The woman's brows knit together, her lips parting slightly as if she might say something. She didn't. Not yet. Near the bar, one of the servers shifted his weight and muttered under his breath, "Man," before catching himself and going quiet again. The manager scoffed, trying to laugh it off. "You people love drama," he said louder than necessary. "He's fine. He got a job." Marcus turned back to him. "That's not what this is," Marcus said calmly. The manager rolled his eyes. "Then what is it?" Marcus didn't answer immediately. He scanned the room once more, meeting eyes, acknowledging presence. Not asking for help. Not seeking approval. Simply allowing people to feel what they were already feeling. Uncomfortable. Aware. Seen. "It's about how fast you decided," Marcus said at last. The manager frowned. "Decided what, who I was," Marcus replied. A ripple passed through the dining room. Not sound recognition. The man at table 9 nodded once, barely perceptible, like a juror settling into a verdict. The young server swallowed hard and took a step forward before stopping herself. The manager laughed again, but it came out sharp this time. Defensive. "Don't make this bigger than it is." Marcus held his gaze. "You already did." The manager's smile vanished. "I'm done with this," he said, standing abruptly. His chair scraped loudly against the floor. "Either go clock in or leave." For a moment it looked like Marcus might move. Instead, someone else did. "I saw the paper." The voice was quiet, but it cut clean through the space. It came from the edge of the room, from the young server tray now resting on the counter beside her. Her hands trembled slightly, but she didn't back down. "I saw the arsum," she said again, louder this time. "You didn't even look at it." The manager froze. Every head turned. Marcus didn't smile. He didn't react at all. He simply stepped half an inch to the side, giving the moment room to breathe. The manager stared at her. "Get back to work." She shook her head. "That wasn't work," she said. That was something else. The room exhaled collectively like it had been holding its breath without realizing it. Marcus watched the shift with the same calm he'd carried in from the door. This was the part people never planned for. The moment when witnesses stopped being furniture. And the room finally started telling the truth. For a brief moment, Marcus wasn't in the restaurant anymore. The clink of silverware dulled. The low hum of conversation stretched thin like sound underwater. In its place came another room. Smaller. Colder. Years away, but close enough to touch. He was 22 then. Fresh suit. Cheap fabric, borrowed confidence. Sitting across from a desk that looked too big for the man behind it. The interviewer hadn't looked at his arsum either. Had smiled politely. Apologetically. "Not quite the right fit," the man had said. "Not the image we're going for." Marcus had nodded. Thanked him. Thing. Walked out with his back straight and his jaw locked, replaying the words all the way to the bus stop. Different decade. Same tone. The memory passed as quickly as it came, but it left weight behind. Not bitterness. Focus. Back in the present, the restaurant felt tighter.
Smaller.
The manager stood rigid now, eyes darting between the server and Marcus, recalculating. He hadn't expected resistance. Not from her. Not from anyone. This isn't your concern, he snapped at the server. Go. She didn't move. It became my concern when you said people like you, she replied, voice steadier than before. A few gasps rose and died just as quickly.
Someone near the bar whispered, "Did he really say that?" Marcus watched the manager carefully.
This was the moment he always looked for. The point where power, when questioned, didn't explain itself. It doubled down. The manager stepped closer now, lowering his voice, trying to reclaim control through proximity. You're making a scene, he said to Marcus. You don't want this to go further. Marcus met his eyes. Calm. Unblinking. You already took it there, Marcus said. I'm just standing in it. The manager scoffed. You think you're special, Marcus thought of the years after that first interview. The late nights. The deals that almost fell apart. The rooms where he was underestimated until the numbers spoke louder than he ever had. No, Marcus said quietly. I think this is familiar. That unsettled the manager more than anger would have. He straightened, raising his voice, now choosing authority over restraint. Enough. I'm calling this. Either you clock in right now or you leave. The words landed heavy, final. A line drawn. The room held its breath again. Marcus didn't answer. He reached into his pocket and brought his phone up, this time screen lighting his face fully. His expression didn't change as he tapped once, then twice. The manager laughed sharply. What are you gonna do, call someone? Marcus nodded. I already did. A pause. The manager's smile flickered. You bluffing Marcus looked around the room at the server standing her ground at the man at table 9, watching like a witness at the quiet tension hanging between strangers who now shared something. No, Marcus said. I'm documenting. He turned the phone slightly, not to show the screen, but to make its presence undeniable. This part, he added, voice even, is important. The manager opened his mouth to respond, and Marcus's phone vibrated. Once. Then again. Marcus glanced down just long enough to confirm what he already knew. The past had prepared him for this moment, and the system he built was finally waking up inside the room that thought it was untouchable. The vibration stopped. Marcus slipped the phone back into his pocket, slow and deliberate, as if nothing of consequence had happened. But the room felt different now, tighter, sharper. Like everyone could sense a shift without knowing its shape. The manager noticed it too. He glanced around, jaw-set eyes narrowing as he took in the faces watching him instead of their plates. The server still hadn't moved. The man at table 9 hadn't looked away once. Power, when stared at long enough, tends to show its cracks. This is ridiculous, the manager said louder now. I'm not going to be lectured in my own restaurant. Marcus tilted his head slightly. That's interesting, he said, because that's exactly what you're doing. The manager stepped forward, closing the distance between them. His voice dropped sharp and poisonous. Let me make this clear. People like you don't get to question how things run here. The words landed heavy, not because they were new, but because they were spoken out loud. A collective intake of breath rippled through the room. Someone near the bar whispered, did he really just say that? Another chair scraped back slower this time, intentional. Marcus didn't blink. That more than anything seemed to unnerve the manager. You think you're above this? The manager continued, momentum carrying him now. You walk in here off the street and expect respect. That's not how the world works. Marcus held his gaze steady as stone. No, Marcus said quietly. That's how your world works. The manager laughed sharp and brittle. My world, this is my world. Marcus nodded once. That's what you think. The manager's face flushed. He turned toward the bar and barked, I want him out. Now. No one moved. He snapped his fingers again, harder this time. Did you hear me? The busser from earlier shifted uneasily but stayed rooted in place. The young server took another step forward, standing fully in the open, now shoulders squared. That wasn't okay, she said, her voice shaking just enough to betray how much courage it took. You can't talk to people like that. The manager spun on her. You're done for the night. She swallowed. Then I'm done. Done.
Silence crashed into the room.
Marcus watched the collapse begin, not explosive, not dramatic. Quiet. Structural. The kind of failure that starts at the core. The manager turned back to Marcus, eyes blazing. You think this proves something? Marcus met his stare. Yes, he said. It proves exactly who you are when you think no one with power is listening. The manager scoffed. And who the hell are you supposed to be? Marcus didn't answer right away. He glanced around the room one last time, letting the weight of the moment settle on every witness, every paused breath. Then he spoke. You'll find out, Marcus said calmly. Very soon. And for the first time since Marcus had walked in, the manager wasn't smiling. He was afraid. Marcus didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. The manager stood there, breathing heavier now, chest rising and falling like he'd just finished a sprint. The room watched the imbalance settle in, one man loud with authority, the other still as a held breath. Marcus slid his phone back into his hand. No theatrics. No warning. Just motion. He turned slightly away from the manager, not in dismissal, but in precision, and spoke into the phone as if the room didn't exist. Yes, he said calmly. I'm inside. A pause. Harvest and home. Front dining area. Another pause, shorter this time. Proceed. That was all. He ended the call and slipped the phone away again. The manager laughed, sharp and brittle, trying to reclaim the air. That's it, you call someone and think it changes anything. Marcus met his eyes. It already has. Nothing happened. Not immediately. And that unsettled the manager more than shouting ever could. Around them, the restaurant felt suspended. Conversations had fully died now. Plates sat untouched. Glasses sweated onto coasters no one noticed. The witnesses, because that's what they were now, didn't look away. Marcus stepped back half a pace, giving the manager space. Not out of fear. Out of certainty. You see, Marcus said evenly, systems don't respond to noise. The manager sneered. You talking about systems now? Yes, Marcus replied. Yours. The manager shook his head, scoffing, but his eyes kept darting toward the front of the restaurant. Toward the bar. Toward the door. Toward anything that might interrupt this moment before it finished forming. You think I'm worried? He said too quickly. Marcus didn't answer. Instead, he looked at the young server who had spoken up. She stood frozen, unsure whether she had just saved herself or ruined everything. Thank you, Marcus said to her. 2 simple words. Her eyes widened slightly. She nodded once. The manager bristled. Don't thank her. She just cost herself her job. Marcus turned back to him. No, he said quietly. She kept her integrity. That word integrity hung in the air like a foreign object. The manager's phone buzzed. Once, he ignored it. It buzzed again. His jaw tightened. He reached for it this time, glancing down at the screen. Whatever he saw there drained the color from his face. He looked up at Marcus. What did you do? Marcus held his gaze. I documented, he said. I escalated. And I let the process do what it was designed to do. The manager swallowed. You don't have that kind of pull. Marcus tilted his head slightly. You'd be surprised what happens, he said, when the right people get the right information at the right time. The manager's phone buzzed again, longer this time. The room leaned in as one. Marcus stayed exactly where he was. Because the counterattack had never been about confrontation. It had always been about exposure. And it was already underway. The manager didn't answer his phone right away. He stared at it as if it had betrayed him, the screen still glowing in his palm. The room watched the hesitation stretch, watched the confidence leak out of his posture inch by inch. Answer it, someone murmured from a nearby table. The manager shot a glare in that direction, but it had lost its bite. Slowly, reluctantly, he raised the phone to his ear. Yes, he snapped. His expression shifted almost immediately. Not panic. Not yet. Yet. Confusion. What do you mean, internal review? He said, lowering his voice as he turned his back to the room. There's no incident report. A pause. The muscles in his jaw tightened. Who filed it? Another pause, longer this time. The manager's shoulders stiffened. That doesn't make any sense, he said. I didn't authorize, he stopped mid-sentence. Around him, the restaurant felt frozen in anticipation. The young server held her breath. The man at table 9 leaned forward again, elbows on the table, eyes sharp. Marcus stood perfectly still, watching not the manager, but the moment his certainty finally cracked. I see, the manager muttered into the phone. His gaze flicked toward Marcus, sharp and searching now, as if trying to reconcile the man standing calmly in front of him with the words he was hearing. Yes, he said into the phone. I understand. He lowered the phone slowly. The room didn't move. What is it? Someone asked quietly. The manager swallowed. Nothing. Marcus tilted his head. That's not true. The manager looked at him sharply. You don't know what you're talking about. Marcus met his eyes. You were just told who I am. The manager's breath caught. That's not possible, he said, but the words lacked conviction. You would said something. Marcus nodded. I didn't need to. The manager took a step back, scanning the room like a man realizing the walls were closer than he remembered. They're asking questions, the manager said, more to himself than anyone else. About hiring practices. About language. Marcus didn't interrupt. They want statements, the manager continued, voice dropping. From staff. The young server stiffened. And witnesses, Marcus added gently. The manager's eyes snapped back to him. You set this up? Marcus shook his head. No. I walked in. You did the rest. A heavy silence settled over the room. The manager straightened suddenly, trying to reclaim something, anything. Who do you think you are? Marcus took one step forward. Not aggressive. Final. My name is Marcus Reed, he said calmly. And you just treated me like I didn't belong in a place I own. The words didn't explode. They landed. A sharp inhale rippled through the restaurant.
Someone whispered, wait, with the manager's face drained of color.
No, he said weakly. That's not. Marcus held his gaze. It is. And in that moment, the power in the room didn't shift. It vanished from one man and settled quietly, unmistakably, with another. No one spoke. The restaurant didn't erupt. There were no gasps loud enough to break the moment, no chairs crashing back in shock. Just a collective stillness, as if everyone in the room understood at the same time that something irreversible had just been said. The manager stared at Marcus like he was seeing him for the first time. No, he said again, quieter now. That's not possible. Marcus didn't raise his voice. He didn't repeat himself. He simply stood there, hands relaxed, posture steady, letting the truth settle without force. The young server's eyes widened. She looked from Marcus to the manager, then back again, her breath catching as realization crept across her face. You're the she started, then stopped herself, unsure if she was allowed to finish the sentence. Marcus gave her a small nod. Permission without spectacle. A low murmur rippled through the room, now no longer restrained. Words slipped out in fragments. Owner, I've heard that name. Wait, isn't he? The manager took another step back, his heel catching on the leg of his chair. He grabbed the table to steady himself, knuckles whitening. You're lying, he said, but his voice betrayed him. If you were really, I wouldn't have to prove it to you, Marcus finished calmly. That landed harder than any accusation. The manager's phone buzzed again. He didn't look at it this time. He already knew. Marcus turned slightly, addressing the room, not as a crowd, not as an audience, but as equals. The problem isn't that you didn't recognize me, he said. It's how quickly you decided I didn't matter. No one argued. The man at table 9 nodded slowly as if confirming something he'd felt from the start. A woman near the bar shook her head, lips pressed together in disbelief. The manager found his voice again thin and brittle. You tricked us. Marcus looked at him. No, he said. I trusted you to show me who you were. The words cut clean. This restaurant Marcus continued runs on reputation, on trust, on people believing they'll be treated with dignity when they walk through that door. He gestured subtly toward the entrance. You broke that, he said. Not because you didn't know who I was, but because you thought you didn't need to. The manager's shoulders sagged. The authority he'd worn so comfortably now looked like a costume slipping off mid-performance. Marcus took one final step forward, closing the distance not to intimidate but to conclude. This conversation is over, he said. What happens next isn't personal. He paused. It's procedural. And for the first time since Marcus Reed had walked into the restaurant, no one doubted who was in charge. The first thing to disappear was the noise. No clatter of plates. No nervous laughter. Just the soft hum of the building settling into something final. The manager's phone vibrated again. This time, he answered. Yes, he said quietly. A pause. His shoulders dropped. Yes, I understand. He didn't argue. He didn't explain. Whatever was being said on the other end didn't leave room for either. When he ended the call, he didn't look at Marcus right away. He stared at the floor as if the answer might be written there. They're locking me out, he said finally. System access. Effective immediately. No one gasped. Because everyone already knew. A tablet at the bar chimed softly. A server glanced down, eyes widening as permissions vanished in real time.
Schedules refreshed.
Names shifted. One by one, authority erased itself without a raised voice or a public spectacle. Marcus watched without satisfaction. This wasn't revenge. It was correction. The young server's phone buzzed next. She looked at the screen, confused. I just got a message, she said quietly. HR wants a statement, and they're asking if I'm available for full time. Marcus nodded once. You told the truth. The manager swallowed hard. What about me? He asked the question small now. Marcus met his eyes, not with anger, not with triumph. With you, he said evenly, this ends today.
Security didn't rush in.
No one was escorted out in handcuffs. The manager simply stepped back, badge suddenly useless, title already gone. The room exhaled. The man at table 9 stood and clapped once. Then again. Others followed, not loudly, not dramatically, but with purpose. Marcus didn't bow. He didn't smile. He turned toward the door. Justice, when done right, doesn't need an audience. It only needs to be done. Marcus paused at the doorway, not because anyone stopped him, but because the room hadn't caught up yet. Behind him, the restaurant slowly came back to life. Chairs shifted. Someone exhaled a laugh that sounded more like relief than humor. A server wiped the edge of a table that was already clean, hands still trembling from adrenaline. The young woman who had spoken up stood frozen near the service station, staring at her phone as if it might vanish if she blinked. Marcus turned back. Every eye met him immediately. This time, no one was measuring his worth by his clothes. No one was deciding where he belonged. They were listening. I didn't come here to embarrass anyone, Marcus said, his voice calm, steady, carrying easily without force. And I didn't come here to remind you who I am. He let that settle. I came here because places like this don't break overnight, he continued. They break slowly, quietly. Through moments people excuse as small. He glanced briefly toward the empty chair where the manager had been sitting. A joke. A look. A word spoken a little too freely when you think it won't matter. The man at table 9 nodded once. Marcus shifted his gaze back to the staff. The truth is, he said, anyone can memorize policies. Anyone can wear authority. His eyes landed on the young server. Integrity, he said, shows up when it costs you something. Her eyes filled, but she didn't look away. I don't expect perfection, Marcus continued. I expect accountability, and I expect dignity for everyone who walks through that door, whether you recognize their name or not. The room was silent again, but this time it wasn't tense. It was attentive. Marcus reached into his jacket and pulled out the R-sum one last time. He unfolded it, smoothed the crease, then set it gently on the nearest table. I never needed the job, he said, but I needed the truth. He took a step back toward the exit. I didn't raise my voice, Marcus said, his hand resting on the door. I raised the standard. The door opened softly. As Marcus walked out, the restaurant didn't applaud. They stood, not all at once, not dramatically, but one by one, staff, guests, witnesses rising into the quiet space he left behind. The door closed, and for the first time that day, the room understood what real power looked like. It wasn't loud. It wasn't cruel. It simply refused to accept less.